everyone, welcome back to Scared in the Name of Science, Season 2, Episode 10. Now, at this point, I owe Rox and you guys an apology.
Do you?
I do.
Oh.
When I originally decided I wanted to look at Nordic and Scandinavian folklore, I was going to look at trolls.
Okay.
And I had every intention of doing so, but in my initial research stage, my eyes got drawn to something else.
Ooh, exciting.
And I found that something else so fascinating that I had to pivot away from trolls entirely and look instead at the Huldra.
Ooh,
So, Rox, have you ever heard of a Huldra? And if so, could you describe them for our listeners?
I have no idea what this is at all. This is completely brand new to me, so I'm very excited. Tell me all about it.
That's fair. So, Huldras are beautiful young women with animal tails. These animal tails can be like a cow tail, but it's also been reported to be like a horse's tail or a fox's tail. However, beautiful as they appear, they have a hollow back, or in some instances, their back resembles tree bark or like a rotting tree.
Well, hang on, by hollow back, what do you mean? As in, like, it's like scooped out, carved out?
Well, to be honest, when they say hollow, that tends to be about as far as the description goes of hollow.
Oh.
So, from my understanding, yes, kind of like scooped out. There's just an absence, a void almost.
Oh, wow, okay, interesting. I wonder what that says about the Huldra? Huldra?
Huldra, yeah.
Huldra's characteristics and personality and things like that. Interesting.
Yeah, it is really. Their like, origin kind of jumps around a lot. I think in the older tales, they've been considered as more of a woodland nymph, and that's kind of what I'm going to be focusing more on in this episode. However, there have also been some changes with stories due to the influence of Christianity, because religion has a nasty little habit of dipping its fingers in pretty much a majority of folklore around. These beautiful maidens have some very interesting stories attached to them.
Okay.
There are lots of tales filled with reoccurring themes of seduction and danger.
Okay.
So the Huldra lure men into the forest to have sex with them. Those who satisfy her are rewarded, and those who don't, she kills.
Valid.
That's a very simplification of the process. The Huldra also have a male counterpart, which is the Huldra Karl, which act in a similar way, except towards women.
Okay, so
And
it sounds almost like succubus and incubus from other stories.
yeah, 100%. And those terms actually pop up a lot when you read into these tales.
Okay.
I will say that their male counterparts are not as widely discussed. There is more of a focus on the Huldra.
Okay, that's fascinating.
The Huldra, like most fairy folk, are very conscious of manners. In one tale, a boy in Tiveden, Sweden, was fishing and he didn't have any luck at all where he was fishing. He wasn't getting any bites.
Sucks.
And he met a beautiful woman. At first he thought she was absolutely breathtaking and he was completely taken aback to see her there. And then he saw a fox's tail sticking out from under her dress.
Okay.
It's forbidden to comment on the tail of a Huldra in an impolite way.
Right.
The boy bowed and said, "Milady, I see that your petticoats show beneath your skirt."
Ooh.
The Huldra, in return, thanked him and then hid her tail. She then directed the boy to fish on the other side of the lake, where he had numerous bites and great luck with his fishing for the rest of the day.
Okay, so sounds like that thing we talked about a couple of episodes ago, where we looked at, like, the fairies will give you a gift, and if you're nice to them, they will be nice to you, and vice versa. If you're horrible to them, they will also kill you.
Yeah, and I do think fairies have a different metric by which they measure manners.
Absolutely.
Because what they consider horrible could just be a very teeny tiny infraction.
Yeah. I mean, I think we talked about all the way back in episode 1 that they are incredibly sensitive to any kind of perceived slight, even.
Yeah, 100%. And I think another reason why I prefer to link the Huldra with the woodland nymph and little folk aspect of folklore is that the Huldra will also sometimes steal human children and swap them with their own child, a Huldrabarn. These, in keeping with changeling myths, are said to be like ugly children.
Okay, so they're contemporaries to the changelings then. They're also kind of giving like dryads from Greek mythology as well.
I don't know. I think it is just that, really good at the manners for like changeling children. It's interesting to see how these elements are all the same, really.
I also do wonder as well if potentially they were brought over when the Viking raids back in time, and part of that then fed into our mythology there as well.
Maybe. I feel like you'd have to go really, really far back in some texts to find out if we had fairy folklore before then, which I'm not sure.
It's just an interesting point, though, because obviously us being in Wales, I know Wales was one of the few places that the Vikings didn't manage to fully conquer because of the presence of the Druids at that period of time. And we've talked previously about how fairies are the spirits of the dead Druids, potentially. So that's an interesting connection there, that maybe these stories then were passed down from the potential Viking invaders and integrated them within our own cultures.
The Huldra sometimes marry humans, for when this happens, she loses her tail and her abilities when she is blessed by a priest during the wedding ceremony. In some instances, she loses her abilities the second she crosses the threshold of a church.
I don't know how I feel about that.
However, she does retain her wild personality, and she can become sorrowful and bitter at the loss of herself. And if she's mistreated by her husband, she will make him suffer in kind, which, fair, completely valid, absolutely.
No. It's clearly another allegory for women losing themselves to that role of mother and instead of being maiden as well during the change to being a parent.
Yeah, I agree. The Huldra are also said to have shape-shifting abilities and are able to disguise and manipulate their appearances.
Okay.
At this point, you may be thinking, shape-shifting women, marriage/men stripping powers away from folklore beings. I've heard this before. And yes, you absolutely have, because, well, let's introduce Rox's favourite folklore being, the Selkie.
Yeah.
Rox, what can you tell me of the Selkies?
Well, the Selkie is a sort of idea I've been aware of since I was very little, especially living in Cornwall, where a creature from the sea would travel around the oceans as a seal, but then would shuck her seal skin and become a fair maiden on land, and often end up married to some fisherman who would then steal her skin in order to keep her forever.
Yeah, perfect. That's spot on. A Selkie is a shape-shifting man or woman who changes between seal and human by shedding their skin to walk on land. In a lot of tales, a Selkie woman has her skin stolen by a man in order to keep her prisoner on land and to bear his children.
Hence that resentment and bitterness again that you talked about earlier.
Yeah, she often eventually regains her skin and flees back to the ocean.
So valid response.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually what I think is really interesting is in a lot of these stories, she's saved by her own children because they're the ones who find the skin.
Yeah.
And they give it back to their mother, or their father kind of like brags about taking the skin and shows it to the children, and the children then tell their mother where it is.
Yeah, and they break that cycle of abuse and violence almost.
Yeah, and she gets to escape.
Really interesting how so many of these stories connected to sort of, well, fairies, but also like mythical beings, especially that sort of have that female figurism, end up rotating around that loss of self to a man or a male into having children. And a lot of it is about them regaining their sexuality and their aspect of who they are. I find that really fascinating.
It's very caging a songbird, in my opinion.
I love that.
Male Selkies, however, were said to lure women away with their seductive powers. And I think there's not as many tales about the male Selkie, but when young women would go missing in coastal areas, it was male Selkies whisking them off somewhere.
Okay.
Very interesting that it's not male Selkies being trapped on land, isn't it? So, although the Selkies are often seen as good creatures, they share a similarity with the Huldras in that they are mixed animal beings who are part of the wild and can be trapped in the human world both willingly and unwillingly.
If I remember correctly as well, I think the Selkie have some form of power over the elements. I might be recalling that out of nowhere, but I think that was part of their thing too, I think.
I'm not sure, to be honest.
Yeah, but I think so.
Yeah. I mean, they're your favourite, so you probably have heard a little bit more about it than I do, so you're sure. Similar to the Selkies, there is a Slavic tale of a she-wolf who took off her skin to sleep. A soldier then stole her skin, and upon waking up, she was distraught to learn that she could not turn back into a wolf. The she-wolf then marries the soldier and they have 2 children.
I wouldn't be marrying anyone that kidnapped me.
I don't know how much choice she had in the matter.
Oh, okay. Yikes.
Let's put some context in place. Some time had passed and the older son had found out that his mother was a she-wolf. He asked his mother about her skin and she denied everything, saying, she didn't know what he was talking about. The boy then asked his father, who shows him the skin.
Interesting. Okay.
The boy then returns the skin to his mother and she is never seen again.
Wow, okay.
Although the Huldra are sometimes thought of as a fairy being and the Selkie usually isn't, there is a similarity in their stories.
Absolutely.
There are many stories all over the world of seductive shape-shifting women, such as the Chinese Wu Jing, who is a beautiful fox-tailed woman. She is helpful or dangerous depending on the tale, but can turn into a beautiful young woman to seduce men and sometimes, in some circumstances, drive them insane or drain their life force away.
Also the Japanese kitsune, who is a fox-tailed woman as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And then you have the bird maidens of New Guinea, who can become trapped in human form by men who steal their feathers.
Oh.
Once reunited with their feathers, she will flee.
Just like the Selkie being reunited with her skin.
And the she-wolf with her pelt. My point being that these stories seem to serve more as a cautionary tale for men and women rather than actually being any element of truth in it. For men, the cautionary tale would be not to be seduced by strange women. They may lose their life and their sanity, as well as it will lead to an unhappy marriage, and a wife will then flee when she's able to. An unhappy marriage and trapping someone doesn't guarantee that they will be there the whole time.
Yeah.
And for women, it's a warning not to become trapped in unwanted marriages, not to put yourself in a position where you are vulnerable, to have something held above you and to keep you trapped somewhere. They need to be wary of men's intentions.
Yeah, this is absolutely making me think back to Angela Carter's version of Little Red Riding Hood again, where essentially Little Red Riding Hood is right on that cusp of between being like a teenager and a woman. So she is very vulnerable at that time to being preyed upon. And in that story, the men are looked at as these, well, the werewolves anyway, are, and the wolves in the story have like given over to their wilderness and their wildness to become these ravenous creatures, are obsessed with kidnapping young girls and ravaging them. Read into ravaging how you want. And it is a cautionary tale for men not to lose their minds to that wilderness, and for women especially to be careful about how they are portrayed. You have that red colouring there as an alternative to symbolise that sort of sexuality and that promiscuity as well. And actually, if you think about Little Red Riding Hood, she's often wearing a white dress underneath a red coat, which is there to symbolise that is just a layer on top of her innocence as well. So these stories all have those similar overarching things. And obviously in Little Red Riding Hood, for Angela Carter, you've got the shape-shifting wolf as well. So
it's also kind of insulting to men as well. Like these myths, like what, they can't control themselves. And if someone cannot control themselves, it's not because they're a man, it's because they're a rubbish person.
Yeah, absolutely. It very much is suggesting that women are these awful temptresses who know exactly what they're doing and can be used and controlled however you want, and that men have no control over their baser instincts. It's just absolutely insulting.
Yeah, it's insulting to everyone.
Yeah, like,
just sort yourself out and
be a decent human being. It's not hard.
I would feel sad not to mention the Fairy of the Wolves. Frustratingly, I couldn't actually find any kind of pronunciation for this online.
Okay.
It's a part of a Portuguese folklore, so I will have a go at pronunciation. I do apologise, but I'm reading it as the Peeira. So she, again, as I mentioned from Portuguese folklore, is a female fairy or a spirit who is a protector of wolves and werewolves.
Oh.
She lives with the pack, protects them and cares for them. Although she's kind of typically seen as this benevolent, like, wolf protector and wolf carer, in some kind of tales, she seduces men and gives them over to her ghost wolves.
Oh.
It's all a bit vague, and to be honest, I really couldn't find too much about these stories online, which is sad because it seems like such a fascinating tale. I would really love to read more about it. If anyone has any resources or has heard of this tale before, feel free to contact us, point us in the right direction.
Have to wonder if there's some connotation and connection there with the idea that the moon is a woman and that wolves and werewolves are controlled by the moon.
Oh yeah.
Potentially, like with the triple goddess iconography and things like that.
Interesting. So whilst I do think these types of stories are cautionary tales rather than being true accounts, I did want to see if I could find any encounters. And to be completely honest, I couldn't find a single reasonable modern encounter.
Which, that is coming up a lot, isn't it?
Yeah.
These stories seem to have died out, which I think is really, really sad.
Therefore, I'm going to be reading some unreasonable modern encounters, courtesy of Quora of all places. The thread was titled, "Is shapeshifting a real phenomenon? Has anyone experienced it or know someone who has? How common is it, if real?" Which I think is a banger of a title.
It really is, but really, we're going to Quora?
Yeah, that was, yeah.
Okay, I'm going to buckle in. I'm ready for a ride of crazy.
And I am going to talk a little bit about why I've chosen to give platform to what I think have been some quite silly accounts. Now, I'm not going to name the people who responded, and I'm certainly not going to be making fun of them because that's just mean-spirited. All I'm going to do is read the responses out. So my first pick of a response is, "Yes, I am a shapeshifter, believe it or not. It all starts with being a birth witch. Unfortunately, shapeshifting is not like the movies, and it is done via your astral form.
Oh, okay.
Astral projection is the same as telekinesis, travel, and remote viewing.
Okay.
Whilst in astral form, I can change myself into a flock of bats or a wolf, a black cat, a crow, and a lion. P.S. It's seriously unintentional to be so dark. Changing my actual form, I can change my eye colour at will by uttering a glamour spell. I can cast written spells, and I've attached an example. I can write an old Theban runic. I've had no training, and I've only read one basic book. I have attached an example of a spell for you to see, as the internet and books don't show you real spells. You should be able to feel its power. That's because it's vibrating from its contents. The universal law of vibration is worth Googling if you wish to understand. It is a pleasure to share a bit of magic with you. Kiss."
XOXO.
So this person has had like 702 answers on different threads that are all about like magically related stuff. So this isn't really low effort trolling in my mind. A lot of time and energy has been dedicated to this type of response.
Yeah, there's definitely things in here that I've heard of, that I've studied and looked into as well. Astral projection and what they call remote viewing. I've heard of that before. I've spoken and met people who have done it. And I'm putting that in a loose connotation there. I can't confirm it. I will say they're changing their eye colour at will. Okay, maybe you've just got hazel eyes that change under different light refractions. I also think that being able to write an old Theban runic, well, I think you probably do need to be more than one book on it to be able to properly write a language, you know?
Yeah.
Other than that, yeah, crack on if that's what you feel.
So my second favourite pick, I will read it out now. 1,000,000% they exist because I have met one.
Oh.
I am sure some paid shill lackey will be along to debunk me.
That's you, Al.
It is.
Paid shill lackey.
Okay, hang on, I'm not done yet. It is usually some low IQ, low frequency educated people sitting with books on the shelf who only believe in the scene and think radio waves are make-believe because they can't see them, so just ignore them and take this on faith. Frequency, my friends, that's all you need to know. It's not so much shape-shifting as changing the perception of the holographic reality to the observer. When I met Roxanne, I knew straight away she was somehow different. The night I seen her shapeshift will live with me for the rest of my life. Her eyes flipped like in the Men in Black, and her feet glitched. I called her out on it. She confirmed it and demonstrated it, and left my life as quickly as she encountered, as if we'd never met. She's out there now anyway, large as life, webbed feet and all. Weirdly enough, my neighbour called in yesterday and commented how it feels like it was years ago that she was even here. I'm actually thinking that myself in the last few days. So I did enjoy that account. I like, you know...
It's got some cracking labels of people there. Paid shill lackey, low IQ, low frequency.
Educated people. I don't even know what's meant by low frequency in this instance.
I do. Essentially, I think they are referring to people who don't have very good critical thinking skills. That's what they mean by low frequency.
It only baffled me because I'm like, they go on about radio waves, and I'm like, who the hell thinks radio waves are make-believe? I've never met anyone who thinks radio waves are make-believe.
I've never met anyone that thinks radio waves are make-believe. I've met plenty of people who think they're going to fry our brains off.
Yeah.
For an example, Homer Simpson would be a low-frequency individual.
Okay.
If that helps.
Yeah, I just haven't heard people being referred to as low frequency.
Yes.
Fascinating.
I will say, this account, if it's to be believed, makes me think of a fairy. Able to shapeshift, weird feet and hands, messing with time. Also feels a little bit trickstery where she, like, gets caught and then is like, haha, I'll really show you what's up.
Yeah, her eyes flipped like in Men in Black.
I don't even know what they mean by that.
I don't know either. I've
seen it and I don't know what they mean by that.
No, I don't know.
They mean like the sideways eye closing, rather than blinking horizontally, blinking vertically.
I'll now move on to the most reasonable out of the accounts.
Wait, you mean a low IQ, low frequency isn't reasonable?
Maybe I just can't see it because I'm a paid shill lackey, and I'm also low IQ, low frequency. So, hey, I am what I am. So I will read the last account that I've included in here. I live in an affluent area in Las Vegas and seen one about 3 months ago. It appeared to be a big rock or bag in the road, but then after flashing my lights to identify what it was, it began moving. I told my cousin, is that a dog? By the grace of God, she was with me because I don't think anyone would have believed me. As I'm saying, is that a dog? It stood up and it was a young girl with long hair.
Oh.
She quickly moved to the sidewalk. I was literally speechless. She appeared young and it was around midnight. I slowly drove past her. The sidewalk is lined with bushes and big trees. I stopped at the corner and contemplated calling the police.
A logical thought.
Yeah. 1, why was the little girl walking in the street? Somewhere between 14 to 21.
Okay.
And 2, WTF was she?
Mm.
I have dark tints and we looked back to see if she was closer to the corner since she was walking our direction, but we couldn't see her. She went from a black blob to a young girl with long hair and clothes. It was the strangest thing I've seen in my life. I still can't make sense of it, but my cousin instantly said, it's a shapeshifter. I've never called the police because WTF was that? Like, WTF was I actually going to report without sounding insane? I'm a God-fearing woman and I still don't understand what my cousin and I had seen.
I can absolutely understand seeing something and not being able to make sense of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, there's nothing for me to question there because I'm like, you saw something, you don't understand what it was, and you're acknowledging that. That's fair.
Yeah, which is why I think, that's a really good account.
Yeah.
So obviously Quora is not a trustworthy site at all to be looking at for like encounters, and I was obviously cherry picking for entertainment, but I really think that they highlight the importance of not taking people's word for things all the time. Rox, what did you think?
This is the exact way that folk tales and fairy tales come about. They're passed down through word of mouth. They're not written down traditionally. You hear it from your friend's friend, and you then exaggerate certain parts of it to make it sound spooky or to freak someone out. Like, you think about, what do teenagers do when they go camping? They sit around a campfire, they shine torches, and they tell a spooky story that they've heard second, fourth, fifth hand. And that's how fairy tales become. So this is just oral tradition in a different format, essentially.
For the third one, absolutely. For the first two, no.
No.
So,
no.
Just no. So, you might be thinking, well, why did you include them? They're quite silly. And I'm not going to be making fun of the commenters, but I am just going to say flat out, I think they're very, very silly. And not as in like the people, but like the contents of the comment.
Right.
And the reason that I wanted to include it is because when you are researching these types of encounters and when you are trying to judge if a topic is true or not, this is the kind of stuff that comes up. And it's important to showcase some of the more ridiculous stuff because it goes so much against its own goal in that it is so unbelievable and so unhinged that it doesn't add any credibility to what it is they're trying to prove. It fully detracts from it.
It's the idea that it's so fantastical that you've gone so far and so into the realm of impossible that it then discredits any morsels of truth that could be in there.
Exactly. So not only does it discredit itself, there might have been elements that were true, it also discredits reasonable accounts that are then put up alongside it. Because if you have these kind of encounters, you don't want to be associated in the same area as someone who is going on about like being able to change their eye color at will with magic spells, and then they included a picture of it, because that's just silly. And I'm not, making fun of the people. They have their own beliefs, but when you look at something like that, it discredits everything about everything that could possibly be genuine about that subject, which is why I think it's really important to kind of draw attention to that.
Absolutely. And it's why people don't come forward with their own stories, is because they believe they're going to be ridiculed, just like the ridiculous ones we see. As humans, we are more drawn to go, oh my God, look at that, that's ridiculous, and have a laugh and a giggle about it, which then makes people go, well, I've had something not the same but similar happen myself. I'm gonna keep stum for fear of being outcast or ostracized.
Or people won't believe me because that's clearly silly, and it's things like that, which is why I think it's important to mention.
Agreed.
Now, I couldn't really find any modern Huldra encounters, and I didn't want to look too much into shape-shifting specifically because there are many folklore tales that involve an ability to shapeshift, such as like skinwalkers and those more like native folklore. I don't want to be overly dismissive of cultures and beliefs, and I don't want to say that things are ridiculous without having like researched far into those specific tales.
I think it's also really important to recognise as well that because we're from a very British culture, what we consider as something that could never possibly happen would be completely different somewhere else.
Yeah, absolutely. And additionally, making light of something too much diminishes a culture, because if they are just cautionary tales and everything, then people might not have ever genuinely believed them. In the same way, like, you got like the boogeyman and that kind of stuff to keep people in check. I do want to say, however, that shape-shifting at the core of a word is something that is possible. We see it in nature all the time in the process of aging. You can argue that babies shape-shift into toddlers and toddlers shape-shift into people. You see it in metamorphosis in insects, such as caterpillars going into cocoons and going into butterflies.
Absolutely.
We can see it in people who can create convincing disguises. They have shifted their own appearance. People and creatures change appearance and physical form all the time. However, completely changing from one creature to another, or characteristics of yourself using supernatural or magical abilities, is highly unlikely and seems entirely impossible. What are your thoughts?
I'm a little bit on the fence with it sort of being seems entirely impossible on shape-changing. I think I don't know enough about the world and its intricacies to be able to decide as a matter of fact on that note. I definitely think it is possible that people are able to perceive themselves differently, and that their belief can be strong enough to feel that way. I will say I do think skinwalkers is something I would love to look into at a later date, though.
Yeah, absolutely. And the power of perception is really, really important. But that's not magical, and that's not supernatural. And you're hesitating to agree because you believe in the magic and the supernatural, whereas I don't, and that's just one of those things. To be honest, I was really gutted not to find any more modern encounters of the Huldras.
It is really sad that as our world gets more advanced, we seem to be losing the fantastical a little bit.
Yeah, I agree. But I suppose the fact that that's happening just adds to the very minuscule likelihood of their existence, doesn't it? Like, if as we're becoming more advanced, the sightings of them are dropping massively.
Well, that's the nature of discovery, isn't it?
It is. If anyone has any encounters or knows of any modern encounters, then please, by all means, share with us. I would love to hear them.
Yeah, I'd love to do like a listener episode of what people have seen and heard.
Yeah, absolutely.
And genuinely, like you recounted the Quora ones, I would love to sit there and listen to these stories and see what people have had, not making a judgment on them, just presenting them as, look, this is an experience, because I think it's fascinating.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd never judge someone who refers to skeptics as paid shield black. No judgment from me, lots of judgment from them.
We listen, we don't judge.
Oh, I'm not doing that, Robin. Right, so I think that brings us to the end. I've had a fantastic time researching. Thank you all for listening. You can find us on Threads, Instagram, Reddit, YouTube and Spotify, so please feel free to hit us up on that. If you have any videos or posts or anything you'd like us to talk about or explore, please tag us at #SITNOS. We also have our email address, scaredinthenameofscience@gmail.com, which if you have anything you want to tell us about, anything you want us to analyse or deep dive into, please send it over there with any pictures or images that you have so that we can have a little look and see.
Thank you so much for the episode.
Thanks, everyone.